Hi, Formula One fans. It's Martha, and I want to welcome you to episode 9 of Cruising 41. We're going to be talking about Miami GP and, all that unfolded this weekend. But I think you'll have to agree with me that the big headline is Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Wow, he continues to write history. He is streaking once again into the record books. And this time, his latest record is he is the only driver in F1's history to convert 3 consecutive poles into 3 consecutive wins. He gave us a masterclass of a drive and an undeniable win. He is carrying this fantastic and amazing and powerful momentum, and he's very comfortable with it, and he is delivering a level of confidence, or he's developing rather a level of confidence that it is amazing. And when you put together confidence and momentum, they do reinforce each other, and this intersection and the loop can define this championship in 2026. He's also having an edge on this psychological dynamic that seems to be very much already at play. But not only is he the first driver in F1's history to convert his 3 pole positions into 3 consecutive wins, but he is now in the conversation and sharing some very important achievements with names like Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher. And that is because his first 3 career poles were achieved in consecutive races. So Ayrton Senna did this in 1985 on his second year in Formula One, which, by the way, Kimi Antonelli is also on his second year in Formula One. They both have car number 12. And what's also very interesting is Senna did this in Portugal, in San Marino, and in Monaco. And Kimi has done this in China, Japan, and Miami. And interestingly enough, those are second, third, and fourth races of the championship, which similarly happened in 1985, and it's happening in 2026. An interesting, fascinating kind of like comparison. I read somewhere and I wanted to share it with you. But just for him to be on that same conversation with those 2, world champions, multiple time world champions, is just an amazing and very impressive accolade. And then he is also the 3rd driver to have their first 3 wins consecutively. And we're talking their first 3 wins in Formula One consecutively. And he is also sharing this with 2 big names, Damon Hill and Mika Hakkinen, also, former world champions. And, since I brought up Senna, I just want to, take a pause here and just talk a little bit about Ayrton. Because Saturday marked 32 years since we lost him in that 1994 awful weekend. And what I will always remember are those unforgettable drives and those victories that always felt bigger than the sport. He inspired not only those of us who had the opportunity to see him race, but also every generation that has discovered him ever since. And only only the rarest of legends can leave that kind of spark, one that refuses to fade away even after they're gone. And Ayrton was one of them. He was unique, impossible to replicate, and also unforgettable. So, yeah, we're still remembering him even after 32 years. But I also just want to mention too Ronald Ratzenberger, who also lost his life in that terrible weekend on the Friday. I believe it was a qualifying when he got that crash and lost his life as well. So let's talk about the weekend. We had in Miami, it was sprint race. It's our second sprint race of 2026. And we saw a very competitive McLaren, actually very strong, great performance. And we saw it, in the sprint with Lando taking pole from Kimi, and then Piastri starting third. During the sprint race, so we've seen this a couple of times now that Kimi he's having some struggles with the starts, and the sprint race was not different. So he struggled with the start. He didn't, quite nail it, and he was dropping places. And I think in an effort of him trying to, take those places back, he started to go into exceeding track limits. So at the end of the race, he received a penalty, 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits, which dropped him into sixth position in the final standings, behind Lando, Oscar, Charles, George, and Max. And so that was the first podium actually in 2026 without any of the two Mercedes drivers actually being, in a podium position. So then we moved into quali, and quali, it was very exciting, I would say. Kimi delivered a masterclass lap, and it was a monster lap, and he secured pole, obviously, and he is been out qualifying George. He did it this weekend yet again, and he was stronger than George all weekend long. As I was saying, this psychological factor, it's very much at play, and it probably is going to give us some very interesting dynamics. But Max, it's nice to see Max being back into Max form, and he was on the front row with Kimi, and then we had Charles Leclerc in third. Charles was looking pretty good, pretty strong all weekend long. Hadjar, who qualified in the top 10, he was disqualified after the quali was completed because they found that he had a non-compliant floorboard, so he was disqualified. And then we move into the race. So the race had to be moved a couple of hours earlier than was initially scheduled because there was a potential for severe thunderstorms in the area. So it was moved earlier. There was still a possibility of sorts to have some level of rain coming through during the race, even with the earlier start. So Hadjar, with the disqualification that he had on the quali, he had to start from the pit stop. And he was the only one that chose to start the race with hard tires. Everybody else chose the medium tires, but of course he had to go into a different kind of strategy because he was starting from the pits. So that could potentially, if the rain was going to come, give him some level of competitiveness and try to make up positions. The start was exciting. Kimi had a stronger start than he had before, but then unfortunately he locked the tires in turn 1 and he went wide. And then Charles took that opportunity and took the lead from him. Max spun and he was able to control the car and kept going, but he had lost ground and positions. Then on lap 6, there were 2 separate incidents, but they happened almost simultaneously. So we had Isaac Hadjar hitting the wall and not able to finish the race. And then we also had an incident between Liam Lawson and Pierre Gasly, which Pierre Gasly's car went upside down. He was fine, luckily, and but they all 3 cars were out of the race. At that point of time, the only car, and I believe it was the only car that took advantage of that safety car, was Max Verstappen, and he went into the pit wall and changed from his medium tires to the hard compound. And while it looked like it was like way too early for doing that, remember that we had that looming possibility of rain. So they took a gamble and they were trying to risk and see if the rain would come and everybody else will have to pit, when he was already pitted, and then just have, just have the edge. So then the regular pit stop window came about, and Kimi went in a lap ahead of Lando, and Mercedes gave him a really good pit stop, and then he put in a monster outlap, and he was able to get ahead of Lando. He did the undercut. Lando came behind Kimi, and then Kimi never lost the lead of the Grand Prix after that. But it was close because Lando was keeping for the most part with less than 1 second, and he was looking very strong. But that's another thing that for Kimi, and I was talking about that confidence and momentum, I mean, he had that pressure of the current world champion behind him, sometimes like less than 1 second, and he was able to keep him behind to be able to win this race. So that momentum, that psychological edge, that mental state, it's all of those ingredients together. Also during the pits, just a normal, pit rotation, Russell found himself in front of Leclerc, and Charles was not happy about that situation, about his pit strategy, about what the team decided, and he made that very clear on his onboard. So yeah, he was just not happy. Then he was engaged, and this was just towards the end of the race. Actually, he got engaged, or he was in the middle of a battle with Oscar Piastri for the last podium position. And then he spun out of turn 3, and he had like a minor touch to the wall, but it created some damage, it looked like, because he was having an issue turning. And because of that issue turning and trying to, keep going, he was getting out and cut at the circuit continuously. So at the end of the race, he received a 20-second penalty for doing that, for repeatedly cutting the circuit, and that dropped him in the final results to 8th for the race. So Kimi won, obviously, as we said before. Norris 2nd, Oscar was 3rd. This was the 2nd podium for Oscar Piastri in the 2026 season. Max also was the recipient of a penalty. It was a 5-second penalty because he did a pit exit breach, and it didn't affect his position at the end, but he received that 5-second penalty. We gotta talk about Franco Colapinto because that was an outstanding result for him. He had a very strong quali. He outqualified Pierre Gasly this time around, and he finished 7th. So way to go, Franco. And that was just an amazing race and amazing result for Franco. And then we also had another amazing result, just comparable with what I was saying about Franco, but with Williams. This was a double points finish for both the Williams cars, with Carlos Sainz in 9th, and then with Alex Albon in 10th. There was some variables that impacted the race, and they were able to capitalize on those. So good to see Williams kind of like, in double points for them. Let's talk a little bit about Cadillac and Checo. So Checo finished 16th, and so it doesn't look like so fancy in paper or whatever, but what Cadillac is doing, it is really, really important to highlight and underscore, because weekend in and weekend out, every race, except for one where Valtteri didn't finish, they are able to finish the race with the 2 cars, which is remarkable for a very new team. So yeah, well, they're still not like maybe in the points, and it's just outstanding to see that they continue to be reliable. And then once I have that reliability, like which they do now, they can start building on that and potentially, optimize the package further to be more competitive. But, it's also worth mentioning that during, I believe it was the sprint qualifying, Checo was very close to move into Q2. It was very, very close. I think at the end it was Albon who was able to get that last position to be able to move into Q2. But that is huge. And we should be able to celebrate those, well, they may seem minor achievements. They are very significant when you talk about and take into consideration that it's just such a new team. So good for them. That's why I have my Miami Cadillac shirt on. So at the end, and Kimi's win, he dedicated that win to Alex Zanardi, who sadly passed away over the weekend. Alex Zanardi was a racing car driver. He raced in the kart series, which is now IndyCar, or it was part of 2 series at the time. And he also drove in Formula One. He had a major accident that he had his legs amputated, but that never stopped him. And in his competitive nature, he was in the Olympics as, in the Paralympics, and representing Italy, and he won medals for Italy, and sadly passed away this weekend. So a fellow Italian, and Kimi dedicated his win to him. But also during the Formula 2 race, we had another Italian who won the feature race, and that was Gabriele Mini. And he also dedicated his win to Alex Zanardi. So then now we go to Canada. Canada is in 3 weeks' time. So once again, we're going to be without Formula One for a little bit. But if anything, if there's something that we sort of learn from Miami, is the pecking order is starting to shuffle. And most of the teams brought updates and upgrades to Miami, but not all of them. And one of those teams that did not was Mercedes. So, but they are bringing upgrades into Canada. So we will see how that order if the order is restored or it continues to shuffle around and see who is going to come on top. It's a very different track from Miami, and it's a more traditional, in a way, track. So we shall see how that all plays out. But excited to continue to see what other new chapters Kimi writes, what other new records he continues to shatter, and you know, hopefully with the refinements and the regulations, we did see a more competitive and more interesting qualifying session. So hopefully we will continue to see how these refinements are giving us a more competitive, a more interesting Formula One. And then, you know, I want to thank you for listening to this video. Give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and then interact with me on my X account. I will have here the my ad, and then or you can comment here on the channel, and I look forward to interacting with you all. Thank you. Bye.